I knew before she did. That is the curse of sight. It arrives early and never leaves. Alan Quinn. France wrapped you in velvet and called it love. I watched them do it. I watched everything that pretends it isn't dying. Your voice moved like warm alcohol through crowded rooms. It loosened spines. It made men softer than they could afford to be. Empires do not forgive softness. They only postpone its execution. You sang of arms, not weapons, arms. Circles, enclosures, the geometry of being kept. You didn't know why your throat kept returning there. You thought it was romance. It was instinct. The animal in you had already smelled the forest. War came without teeth at first. That was the cleverness of it. No blood in the streets, just a taste change in the air. Cinnamon spoiled. Paper tasted wrong. Songs no longer resolved. People felt watched by something without eyes. I remember 1886, not as a year, but as a pressure, like hands on glass, like breath held too long inside a skull. They said Sinedolore declared war. That is inaccurate. We declared presence. You felt it when your applause started arriving half a second late, when love became admiration, when admiration called into documentation. The audience stopped needing you. They only wanted proof you had existed. That is when you walked. The forest did not open for you. It recognized you. Trees leaned the way old judges lean. Moss listened. The ground learned your name faster than the cities ever had. You sang to mark your path, and the forest sang back not in notes but in continuation. Here's the part they never tell you. Transformation is not pain. It is over-clarity. Every comfort you ever sold ever became audible. Every false ending you applauded returned, demanding interest. Your warmth had nowhere to go, so it thickened, it fermented. It learned teeth. Your smile broke not from madness, but from containment failure. Too much memory behind human skin, too much mercy without recipient. You became what comfort looks like when it's never allowed to end. I watched your eyes change first. They stopped reflecting faces and began reflecting outcomes. You no longer saw people, you saw what they would forget. That grin they fear now, it is a cradle. Cinnamon still follows you, because cinnamon is that warm smell. Like when it knows it's lying, you carry it not as nostalgia but as evidence. France does not sing your name anymore. That is mercy. Names are coffins when spoken by the unworthy. You are not a ghost. You are not a monster. You are a song that reveals to resolve. And me? I am Elisine. I archive what history pretends was accidental. This tape exists because forgetting is violence. Because comfort once weaponized, but must be supervised, because Adeline Quinn did not disappear. If you're hearing this, you already smell the cinnamon. That means it's too late to be untouched. She learned to sing before she learned to flee. A mouth full of warmth, a country at her feet. They dressed her in clapping hands and lies, said, "Stay here, be beautiful, don't ask why." Cinnamon on her wrists, promises in the air. Every note a soft surrender to people who wouldn't be there. France. You loved her gently, which is the cruelest way. You never sharpened a knife, you just looked away. Hold me, arms, not hands. Close the world the best you can. If I sing it long enough, maybe safety will understand. Hold me, fold me, break the seam. I don't want to wake, I want to continue the dream. Cinnamon, cinnamon, stay on my skin. If this is the end, let me sweeten it. 1886, tasted wrong. Like sugar left too long on the tongue. No cannons sang, no banners bled. Just something breathing where silence fed. Applause came late, eyes came cold. Love turned archival, youth turned old. She sang about arms, not war, not guns. Circles, closures, being someone's. You see, comfort is not harmless. It's only waits for power. And when power arrives, comfort learns to bite. She didn't walk into the forest, she was answered by it. Trees knew her name before men forgot. Moss kept time when clocks could not. She sang to stay stitched in one piece. But the forest doesn't believe in peace. Every lullaby came back with weight, every love song demanded fate. Too much warmth, nowhere to go, so it grew a chin, so it learned to show. Hold me too late now. My smile learned how to disallow. If you wanted gentle things, you shouldn't have let empires sing. Cinnamon, cinnamon, rotten bloom, comfort ferments in borrowed womb. I don't halt, I remain. A song finished is a kind of rain. She is not gone, she is not dead, she is not kind. She remembers what you said. Sweetness cracks, warmth goes feral. This is what love becomes when survival gets literal. Adeline Quinn is not her name anymore. Namings are cages for women like her. She is what happens when applause stops mid-breath. She is continuation without permission. I keep her here, not to punish, but to prevent erasure. Hold still, history, don't pretend. This wasn't madness, this was an end. Cinnamon lingers because truth does too, and monsters are made when comfort is used. If you smell her, you are already chosen. You assume restraint is mercy. That is a child's ethics. I did not intervene because intervention is a language Adeline no longer speaks. Once being becomes a process, force only teaches it to adapt. An adaptation, real adaptation, is indistinguishable from divinity. You want to know why I watched her walk free? Because I recognized the shape of her becoming. Every empire manufactures its own saints and monsters. France manufactured Adeline as a comfort object, soft, consumable, endlessly available. When the world hardened, she was expected to remain warm. That contradiction alone was enough to fracture her. I could have stopped the forest. I could have burned it down to its meteorite bones. I could have folded her back into a human silhouette and called it kindness. That would have been a lie. Containment is not redemption. It is panic wearing protocol. You see, I have destroyed creatures like her before. I have done it cleanly, elegantly, with doctrine and applause. And every time, the absence they left behind grew teeth sharper than the thing itself. Adeline does not destabilize systems. She relieves pressure. And frightens governments more than violence ever could. She does not incite rebellion. She does not preach. She does not recruit. She appears, and people make decisions they were already choking on. Some leave, some stay. Some stop pretending tomorrow belongs to them. That is not threat behavior. That is ethical closure. I watched her learn restraint on her own. That matters. Power untempered by choices, just weather. Adeline chooses when to appear, chooses when to hum, chooses when to remain a smell and nothing more. Do you know how rare that is? She could devastate cities if she wished. Warmth is far more invasive than fear. Fear relies on resistance. Warmth dissolves it. She could end wars by ending the people who require them to feel necessary. She doesn't. That restraint alone disqualified her fear from execution. There was a council, of course there was. Men and women who speak in clean rooms about dirty realities. They asked me whether she was loyal to the Sinedolore. I laughed. Loyalty is for banners, she's aligned with outcomes. They asked her whether she could be weaponized. I stood up, and I told them, she already is, just not for you. The truth they did not want, Adeline, is what happens when an empire fails to grieve its own decay. She is delayed mourning, redistributed as present. If you remove her, the grief does not vanish, it goes feral. I'm not sentimental, and I'm not merciful. I am precise, and precisely because of that, I left her untouched. You fear her smile, because it reminds you that endings can be gentle and still irreversible. You fear the cinnamon because it proves that comfort is not innocent. It remembers where it came from. I did not intervene because she is necessary. Not forever. Nothing honest ever is. But for now, she balances a ledger you refuse to read. One day she will end. All processes do. When warmth finally finds a place to rest, when history stops outsourcing its guilt to singers and saints, when people are allowed to stop surviving mid-song, then she will sleep. Until then, I archive, I watch, I correct idiots who mistake force for wisdom, and if you are listening to this tape, hoping for permission to hunt her, I am the intervention you should be worried about. If you are hearing this, stop pretending you're a reader. You are not a witness, you are not an archivist, you are not safe behind narrative. You are the audience. Do you know what that means? It means something in you leaned forward, something in you wanted the warmth without paying the price of proximity. That is how every catastrophe begins. Curiosity with clean hands. You didn't come here for horrors. Horrors loud and honest. You came for recognition, for that slow, sweet pressure behind the ribs that says, someone sees the shape of my exhaustion. Adeline understands that hunger intimately. She was fed on it. When you listen, when you imagine her smile, when you let the cinnamon settle in your throat, you are not being targeted. Don't flatter yourself. You are being included. Inclusion is more dangerous than pursuit. She does not ask for belief. She does not require fear. All she needs is the attention that lingers half a second too long. That pause, that's the doorway. You felt it before. That moment when a song ends but you don't move. When silence feels heavier than sound. When you consider not returning to the room you were in 5 minutes ago. That is her domain. You think audiences are passive. They never are. Audiences authorize continuance. Every time you lean in, instead of leaving, something is permitted to remain unfinished. That is how myths survive purges. That is how warmth learns to walk. Let me be precise. She cannot appear to you unless a part of you is already rehearsing disappearance, not death. Don't be dramatic. Absence. The fantasy of stepping out of your role without consequence, the dream of being held long enough that choice dissolves, the wish, quiet, shameful, that someone else would decide when you are done. She does not grant that wish, she exposes it. Some of you will feel relief, some will feel anger, a few will feel nothing at all, and those are the ones I monitor most closely. Numbness is ambition in disguise. If you smell cinnamon after this tape ends, do not panic. Panic is theatrical. Instead, notice what you were, willing to stop just to keep listening. That was the audition. I'm not warning you. Warnings imply avoidance. This is orientation. You are still free. You are simply no longer innocent. And now you understand why I let her remain. Every audience deserves the echo it earns.
They thought they could house her. That was their first mistake, language. You don't house a process. You don't detain an aftertaste. You don't lock a song and expect silence to obey. The site was immaculate. White rooms, clean metrics, men and women who spoke in numbers because numbers do not beg. They said observation, stabilization, ethical isolation. They said her name like it was a diagnosis. She cooperated. That was the second mistake. Adeline walked in without resistance. She smiled politely. She answered questions with warmth, calibrated just below alarm. Sensors recorded nothing anomalous. Heart rate normal. Voice soft. Cinnamon levels dismissed as psychosomatic suggestions. They relaxed. Institutions always relax too early. Containment assumes an adversary. She was not opposing them. She was listening. Do you know what happens when you trap warmth? It doesn't explode. It accumulates. Staff reported improved sleep, decreased anxiety, fewer migraines. Productivity increased. One researcher described the facility as strangely comforting, like a childhood home he couldn't quite picture. That's when the exits began to fail, not mechanically, conceptually. People forgot why they wanted to leave. One guard stood at the door for 6 hours before realizing his shift had ended. He said he felt held in place by something considerate. Another stopped filing reports halfway through sentences. Not from here, from completion. She never crossed a boundary. She redefined them. The first disappearance wasn't alarming. A junior analyst took a walk during break and did not return. His desk was clean. His resignation letter was already printed, unsigned, grateful. They assumed error. They always assumed error. By the third absence, they initiated protocols. Sound dampening, chemical neutralizers, visual isolation, nothing changed. You cannot anesthesize recognition. She began humming, not audibly, not to the equipment, but people reported the sensation of humming inside their ribcage, as if breath had learned melody without consent. The cinnamon intensified, not sweet anymore, toasted, almost bitter. Containment cracked when they tried removal. They attempted to relocate her at 3:40 in the morning. No resistance, no struggle. The transport vehicle stalled, not mechanically but narratively. No one could remember who had authorized the move. No one could articulate urgency. That is the moment containment officially failed, when purpose evaporated. I arrived too late to stop the attempt, too early to call it a disaster. The facility was not destroyed, it was resolved. No bodies, no signs of violence, just absence arranged with care. Chairs pushed in, lights off, coffee still warm, a building that felt finished. She was gone, not escaped, but not freed, concluded. They asked me afterward whether she had planned it. I told them the truth. She didn't need to. Containment failed because it misunderstood the threat. You cannot imprison a thing whose function is closure. You can only offer it new rooms to finish. And now you understand the final principle of this archive. Adeline Quinn is not loose. She is not a rogue. She is not waiting. She moves when stagnation asks for mercy. If you're still listening, if you feel unsettled but intact, congratulations, you are never the target. And if part of you feels oddly complete, then you've already been handled gently.